Welcome to the deep dive. So you sent over a really interesting article this week.
Oh, yeah. Which one?
It's called A Theoretical and Meta-Theoretical Reframing of the Development of Cognitive Processing and Learning. It's from Educational Psychology Review.
Ah, right. Dinsmore, Fryer, and Dumas. Yeah, that's a good one.
Definitely thought-provoking. So what we want to do in this deep dive is, well, pull out the main ideas, the different ways we think actually connect to how we learn.
Yeah, and the article makes a strong point that historically researchers have kind of looked at these things separately.
Right, and that separation seems to have caused a bit of confusion, maybe, kept us from seeing the bigger picture.
Exactly. The authors really zero in on that. We've got all these different theories, different models about how our minds work, how we learn,
Uh-huh.
but they haven't always, let's say, talked to each other very well.
So this article is trying to bridge that gap, figure out why they were separate and how we can, connect the dots.
Precisely. It looks at why that fragmentation happened, the challenges in trying to bring things together, and crucially, shows some examples of how integrated models can give us a much richer, more dynamic view.
Okay, so the core problem is this lack of a unified view, like having lots of maps of small areas, but no big maps showing how they all fit together.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
You've got detailed diagrams of, say, memory or attention or problem-solving strategies,
Mm-hmm.
but not necessarily a clear picture of how they all work together when someone's actually trying to learn something complex.
Right. So let's dive into that. This murky landscape the article mentions. Why has it been so unclear what caused this fragmentation?
Well, a big part of it is that different research traditions just focus on their own little piece of the puzzle.
Okay.
So you had one group studying memory and coding, another looking at learning strategies, maybe another focused purely on motivation.
All doing good work, presumably.
Oh, absolutely. Valuable insights from each. But the issue was they often developed their own language, their own core beliefs about learning, their own ways of studying it.
Like speaking different dialects almost.
Kind of, yeah. And that makes it really hard to synthesize the findings. They weren't always asking the same questions or using compatible methods.
Got it. So these different approaches, different languages, what are the main obstacles the article points out when researchers actually try to integrate these ideas? Why is it so hard?
Well, terminology is a huge one. What one group calls elaboration, another might call deep processing, and another meaningful learning.
Ah, so they might be talking about very similar things, but using different labels.
Exactly, and that just obscures the connections. Then you have differing assumptions
Assumptions about what?
about what fundamentally drives learning. Is it mostly external factors like teaching quality? Or is it more about the learner's internal state, their prior knowledge, their mindset?
Right, those are pretty fundamental differences.
They are. And trying to merge models built on such different foundations is, well, tricky. And then there's methodology.
How they actually study learning.
Yeah. Some prefer controlled lab experiments, isolating one variable. Others do studies in real classrooms, much more complex settings. Comparing data from such different approaches isn't straightforward.
Okay, wow. Different words, different beliefs, different methods.
Yeah. I can see why integration would be a challenge.
It definitely is.
But the article isn't just about the problems, right? It talks about the promise of integrated models. What's the upside if we can bridge these gaps?
The potential is huge, really. The argument is that by bringing these different perspectives together, we get a much more holistic and accurate picture of learning.
Holistic
I mean, we see the interactions, how cognitive factors like your memory influence the strategies you choose, and how your motivation affects both of those, for instance. It's more dynamic. Okay, so not just isolated snapshots, but seeing the moving parts work together.
Exactly. And for you, listening, understanding these dynamics could lead to better teaching methods, sure, but also help you become a more effective learner yourself.
Right. If you understand the interplay, you can manage your own learning better. Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So the article gives examples. Let's look at the first one. The model of domain learning, MDL. Can you break that down simply? What is it, and how does it show integration?
Sure. The MDL, mostly linked with Patricia Alexander's work, looks at how people develop expertise in a specific subject, like physics or history.
Okay.
The key insight is that becoming an expert isn't just about knowing more stuff. It also involves big shifts in your motivation, like your interest, how much you value the subject, and in your strategic behavior,
Strategic behavior meaning?
the learning strategies you use.
Exactly. Which strategies you use and how effectively you use them within that specific domain. The MDL integrates these three things. knowledge, motivation, and strategies.
Ah, I see. So it's looking at the thinking, the feeling, and the doing all
Mm.
together. Precisely. It argues you can't really understand expertise without looking at how all three interact and develop over time.
So, being motivated might lead you to use better
Right.
strategies.
Which leads to deeper understanding, which might boost your motivation further. It's a cycle.
And the article mentions a meta-analysis backing this up.
Yeah, Dinsmore, Hatton, and List looked specifically at strategy use and performance within the MDL, finding evidence for that connection. It really highlights the value of seeing these components as interconnected.
Okay, cool. That's a clear example. What's the second one? Self-regulated learning, SRL. That term comes up a lot.
It does. SRL is basically about how learners manage their own learning process, setting goals, picking strategies, monitoring if they're working.
Uh-huh. Being in the driver's seat of your own learning.
Yeah, exactly. And the article argues that understanding SRL properly requires integrating insights about cognitive processing. It's not just that a student uses a strategy, but how their cognitive system, their attention, memory, comprehension skills, enables them to choose, use, and adapt that strategy effectively.
So it's like you need the cognitive engine to power the self-regulation vehicle.
That's a good way to think about it. Knowing about strategies isn't enough if you don't understand how your own mind works well enough to deploy them at the right time in the right way.
Right. You need that self-awareness of your own cognitive processes.
Mm. And researchers like Green, Azevedo, Wynn, Hadwin, Zimmerman, Shunk, their work really emphasizes this link between the cognitive nuts and bolts and the broader process of self-regulation.
Okay, so understanding cognition helps explain how self-regulation actually functions.
Got it.
What's the third example? Approaches to learning, ATL.
Right, ATL. This framework looks at the different sort of qualitative ways students engage with learning material.
Qualitative ways, like effort levels.
More like the intention behind the effort. The classic distinction, going back to Martin and Celio, is between a deep approach and a surface approach.
Deep versus surface. Okay,
Right.
what's the difference?
A deep approach is about really trying to understand the meaning, connect ideas, think critically. A surface approach is more about um, memorizing facts, just enough to pass the test without necessarily seeking real understanding.
I think most of us can recognize both of those from our own experience.
Definitely. We've all probably done both at different times.
So how does integration fit in here? Is it just about labeling people as deep or surface learners?
No, and that's the article's point. Just applying a label isn't that helpful. Integration means looking at the specific cognitive processes that underlie these approaches.
Ah,
So what cognitive strategies is someone using when they take a deep approach versus a surface one? How does their understanding of the task, their motivation, and the context influence which cognitive gears they engage?
so it's more nuanced than just fixed categories.
Much more nuanced. It's about understanding the interplay between the intention deep or surface and the actual cognitive activities, like whether they're elaborating on information or just rehearsing it. Research by people like Esikainen, Gables, Dinsmore, and Alexander really digs into this complexity.
So someone might intend to learn deeply, but maybe lack the right cognitive strategies, or maybe the situation encourages surface learning.
Exactly. Or someone who typically takes a surface approach might engage more deeply if the task demands it and they know how to activate those deeper cognitive processes.
Okay, so understanding that interaction between approach and cognitive processing is key.
It really is. Especially for educators trying to design tasks that actually encourage meaningful learning.
Right. So across all three examples, MDL, SRL, ATL, the common theme is, well, don't look at these things in isolation.
That's the core message. We need more complex dynamic models that capture how cognition, strategy, motivation, and context all interact during learning.
And the ultimate goal of pushing for these integrated models is,
To get a more complete, more accurate, and ultimately more useful understanding of how people learn. Useful for researchers, for teachers, and for learners themselves.
so boiling it down for everyone listening, the big takeaway is that thinking and learning aren't separate boxes. It's a dynamic system.
Precisely. Trying to understand learning by looking only at memory or only at strategies is like trying to understand an ecosystem by only looking at the trees. You miss the vital interactions.
You need the whole picture.
You need the whole picture. Integration gives us a better shot at seeing it.
Okay. So that leads to a final thought for you, our listener. Thinking about these different angles, developing expertise, managing your own learning, your general approach, deep versus surface, how might looking at the interactions between these cognitive elements change how you understand your own learning process?
Yeah, that's the question to reflect on. Think about a time you learned something really well. Was it just one factor? Or was it a mix of interest, the right strategies, really focusing your thinking?
Or maybe a time you struggled. Could understanding the interplay, maybe a mismatch between your approach and the cognitive demands, shed some light on that?
It's definitely worth considering how these pieces fit together in your own experience.
Lots to think about there. If this deep dive sparked something for you, checking out the work of authors like Patricia Alexander or browsing Educational Psychology Review could be a good next step.
Absolutely. There's a lot more depth there. And this move towards integration is really where the field is heading. It's an exciting time for understanding learning better.
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We hope it gave you some new ways to think about how you think and how you learn. Until next time, keep exploring.